I am very excited to be here and be able to speak with you this Sabbath. It's very nice to be in a place where you can understand everything that's going on. Now, I'm not saying that I don't understand things over in Lithuania, but it's a lot better being able to understand everything. I have been working in Lithuania now for about 4.5 years. And during the time that I've been there, I have pretty much learned the language enough so that I can communicate to the people fairly well. You know, I can understand what the people are trying to tell me, and I can be able to talk back to them. And Joshua Miller, I don't know whether most of you know him. He came down here to White Sand one time and spoke. And he and I kind of work together very closely in all the projects that we work on. He has been there for probably 5.5 years in Lithuania. He speaks the language much better. But the difference between him and me is that I learned Russian along together with Lithuanian. And I don't know how many of you have learned 2 languages at one time, but it is not easy. And I do not recommend it to anybody, because what happens is you get everything all mixed up. You try to speak in Lithuanian and you use half Russian, you know, and vice versa. It's crazy. Now, can you all hear me okay? I wanted to make sure I had the mic up far enough on my tie here. So I've been working there, and Joshua have been working there for approximately 4.5 years in Lithuania. All of the towns that we have gone to work in are towns that have Adventists already in them. We have not tried to go into towns that do not have Adventists. And so we did a lot of colportering in these towns, trying to find out people who are interested in Bible studies, in health seminars, and so forth. But we've done nothing with the dark counties of Lithuania. And so right before I returned to Lithuania this last time, Joshua and I were writing back and forth emails talking about a new idea that we had come up with. We decided that we wanted to go to a dark county where there were no Adventists, where we had never been before. No culprits had been there, and so forth. We were really excited about this because nobody had ever done this of the missionaries from America. We thought, you know, that would be really cool to be going to the towns, start by colportering, and then go to the people, make friends with them, you know, since we're living there, just make friends. And then, you know, you can kind of introduce certain literature and ideas to the people. We figured that we could pass out literature, give out food baskets. We could visit our friends and neighbors, find out what they're interested in. Health seminars maybe, stress seminars, stop smoking seminars, or even Bible studies. And then at the end, of course, to do a Bible seminar once we had some solid contacts. And so by the time I returned to Lithuania, which was sometime in April of last year, Joshua and I had decided that we would move into the lower portion of Lithuania. I'm sorry I don't have a map of Lithuania to show you exactly where everything is. I sold my digital camera, and so I didn't have anything to shoot another picture of this map that I had. So next time. And so we decided we would go into the southwest portion of Lithuania, or into the eastern side of Lithuania. And so there was the one area is right next to Russia and very close to Polish border, right there at the border between all 3 of those countries. I have a book here. Forgot to get when I was here. Have you seen this book before? Can you see that? It's called 16 Years in Siberia. Have you read this book? My wife just finished it this last week. She said it was fantastic. This book is written, well, I should say it's a story of a Lithuanian Jew who was taken out of Lithuania into Siberia. They were 300 miles away from the North Pole. It was very cold. This woman and her husband lived about 20 kilometers from where I'm living right now in Lithuania. So that was very exciting. It's in Kybartai. Kybartai is right next to a huge lake. I don't know, it's probably 5 or 6 miles around. And it is right on the border between Lithuania, Russia, and Poland. And so you just kind of swim through the lake and you can get into Russia if you want to be so, if you want to try that. I'm not willing to try it though. So Joshua and I decided there were 2 places we wanted to go, either to the southwestern portion or to the eastern portion of Lithuania. One of these towns is Vilkaviškis. It means the town of wolves. And this town has never been worked. The other one was in Anykščiai, which is on the eastern side of Lithuania, and there has been a church there at one time, but it's been 5 or 6 years since anything has happened there. And so we thought, well, how do we find a place to live? Because during communist times, when a person wanted to find a house, they had to sign their children up when they were born. And by the time they were 20 or 25, that's when they could finally possibly maybe get a flat to live in. Otherwise, they would have none because there were not any available. And so we figured, it's going to be hard to get a flat. And so we prayed about it. We felt like God was leading us that direction, but we said, we want God for sure to lead us. So we printed up 5,000 little sheets of paper, and we went into these 2 areas and we pasted them all over the cities and outside the cities, along the highways in both directions, on the bus stops. We pasted them on the bulletin boards everywhere because we wanted to have lots of possibilities. We figured out of 500 of these things, we should for sure find something. Well, we received a number of diverse calls. Very, very much fewer than we expected, actually. One man called and said that he had a house for us to live in. So we traveled to where he was, and we took him around to all these places, and I could not believe the condition of these houses. They were more like pigsties than anything that I've ever seen before, and he wanted us to live in these things. And I just could not believe it. And so I thought, he was an alcoholic, and he just wanted some money to spend on some more alcohol, and so he told us later that he had taken down all the rest of the papers that he found, that we had stuck up, because he wanted to be the only one who called us, because he wanted us to pay him, The next call that we got was from the chief of police. He said that we had committed a federal felony for pasting all these little pieces of paper on all the bus stops. And he said if he ever found that again, then we would be fined very heavily. So we waited for about a month, and nobody called. We waited and waited, and finally we thought, well, I guess we'd better contact the real estate agent because it's just not working. And so we contacted him, and it was miraculous, but he lined us up with a house. It was within 1 week he had found us a place to live. Very nice flat. And so Joshua moved there because he had already told his landlady that he was moving out, so he had to have his place first. So once he was living in Vilkaviškis, then he started the same idea of passing out little papers throughout the whole town, in mailboxes this time, and we were able to find a flat for me and my wife to live in. As I look back on what happened, I really believe that God directed us to this little town. This little town is probably about the size of white salmon, maybe a little bit smaller, maybe about the size of Benge or something like that. I don't know exactly, but anyway, very soon after we moved to Vilkaviškis, Joshua and I were sitting in workers' meeting. we were discussing our plans for Vilkaviscus, what to do next, because you need to think about things before you just all of a sudden go start a Bible study or something. And one of our old friends came up to us, and she said, you just moved to Vilkaviscus. She said, I want to come and move there together with you. And we said, oh, okay, well, what do you want to do? And she said, I want to move there and be like a Bible worker there. And Joshua and I turned to each other and we were like, this is amazing. We had just been talking about asking Jeff to hire a Bible worker to come to our town to help us, because we can't do all this work all by ourselves, not speaking the language as well as, a national and so forth. And so we said, we continued talking with this lady. She had been a colporteur for She has been a colporteur for 5 or 6 years in Lithuania. Very strong, devoted Christian woman. Very, very wonderful. And so we said, that's fantastic, And so we invited her to come and stay. She has now been working in Vilkaviscus for about 6 months. And Joshua just wrote to me this last week. She is now studying with 17 people. 17 people. Can you imagine that? And some of them, it's more than twice a week. And so she's actually giving 22 Bible studies a week. And, that's just fantastic. It just warms my heart to think about this, all these people. And she's not only doing Bible studies, but she's also selling books on the side. And, she told me this one experience where she was colporteuring, and she knocked on the priest's house in this one town. She was not working in Vilkaviscus. She was colporteuring in another little town not far away. And this priest opened the door, and he said, so what do you need? And she said, well, I have some Christian books, and would you be interested in buying some? And he said, I think this great controversy would be great for my Bible study, midweek Bible study class I have every week, And he said, this is great Bible prophecies by Mark Finley. He said, that would be fantastic. He said, I'm going to buy these. And so he bought, 5 or 6 of our books. Some even by Ellen White. Just fantastic. The experiences this lady is having is just tremendous. We are living 22 kilometers, so it'll be about 10 miles from Mariampolė. There's a picture here of Mariampolė Church. Whether you've seen it or whether it's coming, I don't know. The Behrmann Church is a very good Christian church, very good Adventist church. We really enjoy going there. And this is where Josh and I attend most of the time. But because we're doing so much traveling in Lithuania, we don't visit Mariampolė very often. In fact, right now they're switching pastors around. And so Joshua and I have been made the associate pastors of this church, because their pastor has to come and go to another church. And it needs him pretty badly because it's a growing church, has lots of new members. And so we are doing a lot of preaching, both in Mariampolė and all over in Lithuania. Most of the time I'm preaching 2 or 3 times out of the month in different churches, traveling around this church and that church. It's really exciting. And the interesting thing about it is that when I was in academy, my speech teacher told me that I just didn't have the ability to speak. She said, you need to go do something with your hands. She said, nobody will listen to you. But you know what God did? He sent me over to Lithuania to preach. And it's even better than that, because when I was colporteuring in 1996, I applied to be a big booker the following year after that, and I was denied. They said you're going to have to redo a whole summer of mega booking in order to prepare you for the big booking. They said you just can't, you don't have it. So what did God do? He sent me over to Lithuania to teach people how to colporteur. Isn't that interesting? For That's right, exactly. All things are possible. That's what God can do with people who are willing to be used. We have had a summer colporteur program for the youth the last 4 years now. And as I said, I've helped out in these training programs every single year. And we have had tremendous success. We have sold thousands of books. We've gained numerous contacts, even baptisms by these seminars. Praise be to God. So, because we had moved to Vilkaviškis with the hope of starting a church, we thought, it would be perfect if we have our colporteur program right here in our own little town. And so we sent out invitations to the young people in Lithuania, asking them to come. This time we decided that, this last year of 2000, we decided we were only going to accept 6 people because we didn't have very many places to put them. We didn't have a whole lot of room. Only 6 people tend to you can control them better, I guess, if you want to use that kind of words. When you have 16 or 20 people, it's kind of hard to keep them all together, We had a little problem with that the last year, but anyway. So we decided we would accept 6 people. God brought to us 4 people, only 4 people, who were interested in selling. We were a little bit disappointed, but after we had finished, we were very thankful that it had been 4 people, because our team was very courageous and they did a lot of things that probably the rest of them would not have done. This year we decided we'd do something a little bit different. We bought, one of these little a table that you could eat on, and had an umbrella on it. I don't know whether we have them here in America because I don't remember things like that. But in Lithuania, you have these little plastic tables. We bought this thing, and then we took it to the marketplace on market day, and we set all of our books up there in a big long row. Then we had a box, and on the box, in the box, it had a hole. You could drop things into it, and we decided we would have a little drawing. We said, okay. We had written on the box, we said, if you're interested in receiving a free book, which we were going to give away a free Bible, we said you have to buy one of our books, and then you can sign up, your name and address for this drawing. And that worked really well. We had 20 people who bought books that day and who said they wanted the Holy Scriptures, the Bible. One person won it. We have yet to find the man. We sent it to his address. We don't even know where he lives. I mean, he gave his address, but it was somewhere. We looked on the map and there was no such place. So we sent it. I guess it got there. But anyway, it's most of the people signed up for health classes. And so right now, Lena and I and Joshua are thinking about maybe trying to start up some kind of health seminar. Doing just like I have right here. Having a projector, just putting the information on the screen there and just doing a health seminar, that would be so exciting. Another thing we did with our colporteurs is we went to a resort town, Palanga. Do you remember Palanga, Betty? Yes. We have a Lithuanian right here with us, this lady sitting right here next to my parents. She is from Lithuania. I don't think she was, how many years were you there? To 12. She left Lithuania when she was 12, and she's been here ever since. So yesterday I called her up, and I was speaking to her in Lithuanian. I invited her to come to my presentation today. Very glad to see you, Betty, and Mr. Kennedy. So we went to Palanga, and we decided we would try to sell books there to these people who are all healthy kind of people, all going to the beach, to swim or to get some sun. It did not work out so well, though, because the people said, oh, I don't have money, or I'm already healthy, or so forth and so on like this. So that didn't work out so good. But we're trying new methods of getting books out to the people, because going door to door is not the only way. There are many different channels, many different avenues that we can use, and we must use the wisdom that God has given us, and He will give us ideas to use. Another thing that I believe I talked about last year when I was speaking here, was starting a prison ministry. I don't know whether you remember this. Maybe I didn't talk about it. Anyway, Joshua and I decided that we wanted to start a prison ministry, just passing out books to the prisons. And so we went to the general of one of the prisons in Mariupol. We went right up to the top. We went to the security in the prison there. He said, well, we want to talk to somebody because we want to put books in the prison. They're like, huh? What is this? What's he trying to do? So they sent us right up to the general, or whatever you call him, I don't know. And he told us that we could not go into the prison without special permission from the top guy of the Department of Justice in Lithuania. He said, you can't do it because you're American. And we were like, well, what's the issue? And they said, well, that's the way it is. That's the law. So we chose a time, and we went to the top of the prison department, the Department of Justice, and we presented our idea to him. We showed him the books that we wanted to give out in the prison. We showed him letters that told who we were, why we were in Lithuania, what we were doing in Lithuania. And then he told us, he said, well, guys, he said, I'm really sorry. But he said, I'm not going to give you any permission. He said, I won't even talk to you about this until you give me letters of recommendation from one or all of the 9 traditional churches of Lithuania. Those churches, I'm not going to name them all to you right now, but one of them is the Catholic Church. One of them is the Russian Orthodox Church. One of them is Jews, and there's Buddhists, and there's all kinds of different other religions, Lutherans and so forth. But Adventist is not one of those traditional Lithuanian churches. And so we thought, well, now what are we going to do? And so Joshua remembered that he had met one of the archbishops of the Lutheran Church. And the Lutheran Church is one of the traditional churches. And so he went to visit him. And he said, we have a health book, we have the Desire of Ages, we have Steps to Christ and Thoughts on the Mount of Blessing. And he said, we want to put these into the prison system in Lithuania. He said, can you give us recommendations for those 4 books? The Archbishop said, I'd be glad to. He wrote out a full letter of recommendation to all the books that we have ever printed. Every single one of them. That's including Great Controversy and Great Bible Prophecies by Mark Finley and everything. I have pictures of the books up there, by the way, later on here, probably. And Joshua was totally speechless when he saw this letter. He was like, man, God is really working for us here. And so then we thought, well, the general of the Department of Justice told us that he specifically mentioned he wanted a letter of recommendation from the Catholic Archbishop in Kaunas. And so we thought, well, what do we do? Do we just take this one letter, or should we try to get more? We didn't want to waste our time, and so we thought, well, we'll go ahead and try to get some more letters. So we went to the priest in Vilkaviškis, the church there in Vilkaviškis. And we knocked on the door. He invited us in. Very, very business-like man. And he listened to what we had to say, and he said, I don't have the authority to be able to give you this kind of letter. He said, you need to go to the bishop who's over this district, over my district. He said, maybe he could help you. And so we said, okay, so where is he? And he gave us the address. And so we went to visit the bishop of Mariupol. And he was right in the middle of some important meetings when we got there, and so we had to wait a couple hours. So pretty soon he drove up in his nice brand new BMW with a chauffeur and everything, And he got out, went into his house, and so we went and knocked on the door, and the secretary let us in. And we said, can we speak with the bishop? And she said, well, what do you want? They're very nervous about letting you talk with the bishop, and so we said, well, we have some business. And she said, okay. So we went in to see him, and he was very nice to us, very polite, talked to us, and we told him our plans to put some books. We gave him a copy of 2 books that we wanted to put into the prison system. And he said, well, he said, really, he said, I'm only like the neck turning the head. He said, I don't have the authority to give you such a recommendation. And so he said, you'll have to go to the Archbishop. And Joshua and I were not real excited about that. We were kind of nervous. We didn't know what to expect, And up until this time, Joshua and I had gone by ourselves. We didn't take a translator. We were just, talking to the guy all by ourselves. But this time we figured we'd better take a translator with us. And so we went to this Archbishop. It's in the old town of Kaunas, and we walked up to this huge palace where this priest, this Archbishop, lived. And we asked some people outside, well, what does it take to get an interview with this guy? And they said, well, he said, you have to have an appointment. There's no way you can just walk in on him, And so we thought, well, we can't make an appointment. We're already here, so we're just going to see whether we can try to get in. So we walked in, and security met us, and they said, what do you want? And we said, well, we need to talk with the Archbishop. And they said, well, just a second. So he called up the Archbishop on the intercom or telephone, whatever, and he explained, there's 2 Americans down here, and they want to talk to him. And there was a long pause, and finally he said, okay, send them up. So we were escorted up this magnificent stairway up into this, up to this guy's office. And we walked into his office, huge office, with all the nice stuff in there. And we were seated at this guy's desk, and he said, so, what can I do to help you? And so we explained to him what we wanted to do. And he said, I'm sorry. He said, I can't give you that kind of recommendation. He said, these books do not have the stamp, my stamp in them. He said, it has to be at publication that stamp is in the book. He said, because of that. And he said, secondly, because you're not Catholic. He said, I can't give you that kind of recommendation. And Joshua and I didn't know what to do. Here's the guy sitting right here who has the authority to let us into the prisons, we thought. And he won't let us in. So we thought, well, what do we do? So we figured, I guess we'll have to go back to the general, the Department of Justice, and talk with him about it. So we returned. It just happened to be that the general was entertaining some other guests who had come from somewhere else, and he could not speak with us. And so we were thinking we were going to have to come back the next day, but then the secretary to the general said, okay, I'll see you. So he came down from his office. We went up into his office, and we talked with him. And he listened to us, very polite man, very nice to us. And he said, just a moment. So he left the room, came back in about 10 minutes. We thought, what's this guy doing? Are you going to put us in prison or something? Or what's happening here? And so he came back with a book. And he started leafing through this book. And then he said, you don't need any letters of recommendation. He said, I don't know what the general's talking about. He said, as far as I'm concerned, he said, according to this book right here, he said, this is the laws by which the prison are run by. He said, you don't have to have that. He said, there's 2 ways you can go in. He said, it's legally or illegally. He said, as far as it says right here, he said, you can go in through the Department of Foreign Affairs, go to them, get permission, documentation, and so forth. Or he said, you can simply go to the priest or the chaplain of the prison and get permission from him. So we thought, well, that sounds easy enough. So that's where the prison ministries is sitting right now. I'm hoping this next time when I come back I'll have something to say. More than just what I said about the prison. Hopefully I won't have to go in illegally and be stuck there and start a prison ministries anyway. Joshua and I are very concerned about the church in Lithuania because there are many problems that they are having. They have a lot of questions about Ellen White. They don't believe, I would say that there's only one pastor out of all of the 14 pastors who actually sincerely believes that Ellen White is a prophet of God and who accepts all that she says. The rest of them don't believe her. They think she's, a good writer. She has good information, but when it comes down to it, they don't stand behind her. That's one area. There are millions of others. And Josh and I are concerned about that because it seems like these people the pastors are not sharing what they need to know, what the members need to know. The pastors are keeping that information from their members. Maybe unknowingly, maybe knowingly. I don't know. It's not for me to judge. But after listening to hundreds of sermons, I know what they're preaching. And it's not what people need to be hearing today. And so Josh and I have started revival meetings. In these revival meetings, we are going around to the churches who invite us and sharing with them issues on Bible study, on the law, on Ellen White. One of the issues, our standards. Because the pastors don't preach the standards in the churches over there. When the people are brought into the church, they are not grounded on a good foundation. They don't really know what they believe. And many of the members, after they're brought in, within a month or two, they're out of the church. It's very sad. And Josh and I are concerned about that. And so we're trying. And so now we have done 3 revival meetings in 3 different churches. One of them was Mariampol. And another was in Cholet. And another one in Biržai. Cholet is pretty much not quite the center of Lithuania, but pretty close to the center of Lithuania. And Biržai is all the way at the very top of Lithuania, right next to the Latvian border on the north. Another project that Josh and I have been working on is these right here, Lake Husandra. Can you see all that well enough, everybody? Lake Husandra. This is a booklet that Josh and I are printing. We are paying to have it translated, then edited, and then I do the layout on it, and we print it in Lithuanian for the people, and then we sell it to the members. Here's the newest one that just came out. These issues come out every 2 months, and we're kind of trying to do the same thing as what we're doing in our revival meetings. We're trying to give the people the information that's going to prepare them for Jesus soon coming, because I believe, and Joshua believes, and I hope you believe the same thing, that Jesus is coming very soon. And I think a lot sooner than many of us believe. And the people really enjoy this booklet. It's probably not totally grammatically correct. I'm sure there are mistakes in it, especially in the layout. But there are many. The point is there. The people, God's Word is getting out to them, and that's what the important thing is. And this issue right here is our 9th issue, and so we've printed 9 times within the last year and a half, approximately. And just these, we went from a 24-page booklet, black and white color or cover, very low quality, to now we have a full color cover, and it's 56 pages. And just imagine all of this information, God's Word that's getting out. We include a lot of Ellen White articles from Review and Herald, many of these other books along this line. We have sermons in there by A.T. Jones, some by Pastor Richard O'Phil. I don't know whether some of you are acquainted with him or heard some of his sermons maybe. He's a very fantastic revivalist out of Florida. And Jeff Rich. We also have included some sermons by him in here. This one right here is Ty Gibson's book called Even the Death of the Cross. Probably many of you have read that book. And we just translated the whole book, and then I had to cram it to get it all in here because it was so long, but I got it in there. And so, we're just getting this information, and the people are just drinking it in. Before, all they had was the Bible. And the Bible is wonderful. It's fantastic. But light is progressive. God's Word is progressive. And with all this extra information, all this extra knowledge, God's Word that's getting out, it's really fantastic. God is really helping us. We are also doing a lot of publishing. The last book that we printed was Conflict and Courage by Ellen White. It's a morning devotional. Probably some of you have read it, maybe several times even. It's a very good book. We translated that into Lithuanian and printed it. And this was the very first morning devotional that's ever been translated into Lithuanian. And so we sold many of these because, it's a new thing, something that people have never seen before. And they really enjoy it. It's very strengthening to character building stories. Very good. Another thing that we have worked on is a health brochure. There's actually 6 of them. This one right here, it says alcohol and pregnancy. It says birth defects in a bottle. And here, as you can see, it's talking about the effects of alcohol during pregnancy on the little baby that's being formed. This is there's 6 of them. There's 3 on alcohol. I don't remember now what the other titles are, and then there's 3 on tobacco, the harmful effects of tobacco. And this is very attractive. It has nice paper, it's full color. And what we want to do is hand these out free to people, like at health seminars, even to young people, so forth like this. We think that this is going to be a very strong evangelistic tool and even health tool. Health in a training tool as well. Right now, we are working on Christ's object lessons. It was translated and edited and printed, I think it was printed about 5 years ago. But it was translated and edited by non-Adventists. And basically what happened is it was a piece of garbage because the person didn't understand the spiritual terminology that was used in the book. And so we had to retranslate the whole thing. And right now it is in the editing process. And so I don't know how long that will take. It may take a year to be edited. The person who is doing the editing is a registered nurse who works in a psychological institute. And she cannot quit her job totally to be able to do this. And so she's working half-time with us. And the last book that I'm going to talk about is Patriarchs and Prophets. We have it translated. And right now, as soon as Christ's Object Lessons is finished, we will give that Patriarchs and Prophets to her to start editing. And we really think that the Patriarchs and Prophets is going to be a very good book that's going to be going out to the people. And we're really praying now for more editors because our editors are so few and far between that it's impossible to get anything done quickly in Lithuania. It's really terrible, but that's the way it is. And, we're just praying that God will send us more people who have that ability to edit. I see that the time is I'm kind of going over here, but I have a few things more to say. So if you need to leave, feel free. I had one lady when I was preaching on tithe, because I'm the stewardship assistant, and she was sitting right there on my right side, and I was preaching, I guess, a little bit too long for her. Maybe I was kind of pricking her heart or something. I don't know. She kept saying, you need to quit. People are getting tired. They need to go home. And so if any of you need to leave, please do so. I don't like the stress of having people, looking at their watches and so forth. So this last summer, we had a camp meeting. The very first camp meeting that we've ever had in Lithuania. We invited a Polish pastor, and the blessings that we received from this camp meeting were just unbelievable. This next summer, we have invited Pastor Richard of Phil to come over to Lithuania, and he has agreed. And so we're going to be having him. We're going to have a 5-day camp meeting. We will also have Jeff Rich. Also, he will be coming over and speaking, and we have 2 other people that are going to be speaking as well. And so we are really excited about this camp meeting that's coming up. You know, God is really leading. He's just opening the doors and we just kind of walk through. You know, that's the way God leads. The last thing I want to talk about is pretty much the last thing that I did before I returned here to America. My first year in Lithuania, I went to Klaipėda, and I was visiting Jeremy, and we decided that we wanted to go and visit an orphanage. They had worked out with this orphanage a program that we could do in the orphanage, you know, for the little kids. And so, you know, I kind of went along with it. You know, I hadn't been there in Klaipėda very long, so I went along with it, you know, and I sang a song, you know, and I think I told a story or something, you know, like this. And it was really exciting, not only for the kids, they really enjoyed it, but for me, you know, being able to share with these little kids. Not all of them were little, of course, but Jeremy had collected some money from his relatives or something, and we gave out little gifts for the kids as well. It was really interesting, little snacks for them. But since my first year, I haven't done anything with the orphanages at all. Haven't gone to visit them or anything. And this last year, we had a team of people come from Norway who wanted to give some kind of humanitarian aid to orphanages and possibly to some mental hospitals. And so they brought a huge truckload of stuff, all to be given to orphanages. And so we were, at that point, we had to go back into these orphanages. And you know, I was totally shocked with what I saw. My first year to Lithuania, I knew no Lithuanian, basically. I couldn't understand what was going on. But this time, I can understand what's going on. And you know, it is terrible in those orphanages. I could not believe what my eyes saw. I mean, 2 of the orphanages that I went to are in debt of something like $20,000. And it's in debt to the electric company, the water company, and heating companies. And these directors of these companies have come to the orphanage and said they're going to turn these facilities off, these utilities off to the orphanages if they're not going to pay. Can you imagine that? Turning these things off to a self-supporting orphanage. I could not believe that. That's inhumane. I mean, to me, they should understand. They should try to help out at least a little bit. In many cases in these children, I could talk a lot about the orphanages, but I'll keep it short. There's molestation that goes on, rape of the girls when they go off of campus, because the people who live around there, they know, and so they abduct them as they come out, you know, to go to school or to whatever. There's violence that goes on. And even, there was one of them where there's neighbor kids who will come onto the orphanage grounds and break things that are on the orphanage. Break windows, break things in the orphanage grounds. It's just terrible. And what can they do? I mean, there's not really anything they can do. The police will come, but by that time the guys are gone, you know. So, I mean, it's impossible to remedy. Most of the children do not have nice warm clothing to wear during the winter time. Many of them have to wear summer shoes for winter time. And over in Lithuania, it's cold. It's very cold. One of the orphanages I visited, they have washing machines that are probably 25 to 30 years old. And they have simply just given up the ghost. They cannot work anymore. They're just sitting there. And I should have gotten some pictures of them, but I didn't. But anyway, many of them do not have kitchen utensils. Bowls, plates, pans, refrigerators, all of them have gotten so old that the pans have holes in them. You know, the utensils are all totally worn out. Many of the things are broken. Refrigerators don't work like they're supposed to. And you know, right now, we're trying to think of ways that we can try to help these orphanages. And we're asking from Norway more help. You know, we're asking from here in America as well. I was reading this morning from Prophets and Kings. God placed Jerusalem directly in the middle of a crossroads between all the world travel. And so everyone were to come down through Jerusalem to go wherever they were going or to sell or whatever. She says that God specifically placed Jerusalem where it was and His people where they were so that His word could be taken out to all of these parts of the world where these people were coming into Jerusalem from. And I believe that God has placed each of you here, right in White Salmon and Hood River areas, for the same reason. Think about it. We have people from all over the whole world coming here to our gorge area to windsurf. I was over in the Philippines talking with one of the guys. He said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Well, I'm from the White Salmon." He said, "Oh, I know right where that was." He said, "I was over there windsurfing." I was like, man, this is a small world. We are right in the center of world travel right now. And I think that there's a reason for it. I think that God wants each one of us to give a message. God has a message for each one of us to give to these people who are coming. Ellen White has a lot to say about going into the tourist areas and working with those people because there's so many people going in and going out. Then that message will be spread out farther. Do you know what that message is that God wants each one of you to give? Do you know to whom that message is supposed to be given? Are you sharing that message with those who need to hear? This is a challenge I'd like to leave you with, and at this time I would like you to bow with me to pray, and then we will sing the closing hymn. That's the way you do it in Lithuania. Dear Father in heaven, I'm so thankful for giving us the opportunity to hear your word, to hear this message that you have given to us. And I pray, dear Father, that we would understand this message, that we would understand to whom this message is to be given, and that we would not only understand all of this, but that we would give that message to those people who need to hear it. I pray that you would bless each one who has come here today as they go to their separate homes. Protect them, watch over them, give them wisdom and strength in giving that message to other people. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.